Hello and welcome to our web session, Reimagine Experiential. So my name is Christiane Schulz. I'm CEO of Edelman in Germany, and it's great that you are joining us. Today, actually, I have a very special guest, a colleague. Her name is Jenna Marrone. She is Executive Vice President from Edelman UEG. Welcome, Jenna.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great that you can join us. So you will talk now and show us what experiential might look like from your point of view in the future, how it will be moving and developing in the future. And you will show us actually some slides. And afterwards, I'm very happy to take all your questions if you have some. Therefore, you would need to write down your questions in the Q&A section, which you probably find down below here in the middle of the screen. And then we go through them after you just showed us what experiential will look like in the future. And with that said, I already hand it over to you. Here you go.
Great. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a little bit of patience with us today. Behind the scenes is my colleague, Vanessa, and she's going to be clicking forward for me. So we'll go ahead and load up the presentation I'm going to take you through today, provide you with a little bit of context with regards to where we're seeing audience behavior as it pertains to opportunities for experiential, and then talk a little bit about trends, and really mostly and most importantly at the end, talk to you about how we're going to pivot or help you pivot from what was a normal sort of IRL moment for experiential and potentially bring that online. So go ahead and click forward. I think first and foremost, just to really introduce myself and UEG a little bit, because you might be saying, oh, who is UEG? Well, put simply, we're Edelman's entertainment, sports, and marketing agency. We like to say that we connect brands to culture, which really makes sense of why experiential sits within UEG. And we're really leading that offering for the DJE family across the globe. I said good morning, I'm sitting in Manhattan, but we have teams across the country that work with our Edelman colleagues lockstep on a myriad of different projects. We're the creative minds behind the Taco Bell Hotel, which I would boastfully say could be said to be the largest experiential activation this year. Go ahead and take a look. It'll give you an understanding of the type of work we do, but it's not just me saying it. We've won some great awards, Adweek, X Awards, Drum Awards, that we're really proud of. And I think most importantly, we're already taking our clients virtual, from small product offerings to big conferences. And so really wanted to join you guys today and talk about what are those opportunities and insights and some key learning that you can start to apply right away to your projects that either may have gotten tabled because of COVID or might be in the hopper as we start to look at the back half of the year. Next slide, please. So we have aptly named 2020 in our office the season that vanished. And across the globe, live events, as everybody knows, has been postponed or canceled due to the pandemic. This has disrupted countless brand initiatives and quite honestly, the entire advertising industry, as experiential moments have increasingly become a critical component to integrated plans. And it's really about those key touch points that are integrating brands with consumers in these in real life moments. Next slide. But I think the good news is brand-driven experiences are not going away. We were just talking prior to going live with you guys that, so many people told us, oh, where is experiential? You guys are on hold. So much is not happening. We did go on pause, but that doesn't mean that consumer audiences specifically are still not craving those tangible engagement moments. And there are such great opportunities for brands and companies to take advantage of that, but just in a different way, as long as you understand the landscape that has shifted as part of that. Next slide. So with anything from an experiential perspective, we really look at and start with audience insights and behavior patterns. And that's a little bit of what I wanted to start with today specifically. So when we think about, regardless of where you're sitting, whether it's in Germany, whether it's in the UK, all the way here in the States, commerce is starting to open back up. And with that, we're going to start to see more hybrid digital experiences. This is really important. People are becoming more comfortable attending events, but there's going to be lots of different caveats as it pertains to social distancing, health parameters, things we're going to have to start to take a look at. there's going to be the rise in small, intimate gatherings. So small groups that are talking about topics of conversation, that you're convening over new product launches, breakout sessions from a conference perspective. But that's going to really start to be the norm as people feel more comfortable in a trusted, smaller group. And experiences should be really pivoting to digital first. How are we further integrating your digital social channels? And what are the physical elements that we can do to start to enhance that, especially with the remainder of 2020 and us still navigating the unknown as we reopen countries and cities across the globe. Next slide. And I think as part of those behavioral patterns, while we all sat in quarantine in different ways, there are some new engagement patterns that are going to be the new norm. First of all, work from home is here to stay, I think, whether some of us like it or not. We're seeing a lot of the digital platforms leading the charge there with the Googles and the Facebooks, allowing their employees to stay home in perpetuity, right? So that means different behavioral patterns. There's going to be a projected shift and prioritization of a work-life balance. How do we create new and different places to intercept our audience? What time of day? Where can a brand step in and provide an experience as part of these new patterns and how they unfold? And with decreased corporate travel, that is going to continue. What, if there are live experiences, our crowd's going to look like? You look at an investment that you might have made into a big conference or a live event, and what do we think that audience participation is going to be? And what is the investment we should be taking against that? Next slide, please. And I think we all can't say this enough. It's really going to be safety over loyalty as we think about experiential moving forward. Just because we have the removal of a social distancing order doesn't mean that it's going to instantly remove that stigma of crowded, busy environments, especially when we think about mass transportation in some of our bigger cities, or the larger sort of crowded conference floors that we're used to sort of elbowing our way through. And so as we think about what events look like from a virtual or hybrid perspective, we have to think about investing really in safety precautions as part of our programming. And it's going to be really critical for brands because they need to establish trust and credibility with the audiences that they're participating with or providing experiences for. Next slide. And I think if we don't watch out, experience shaming is going to be a thing. I think there's going to be a stark divide in society in different areas that will be reinforced as those that might be deemed as privileged. So either that you have the money to participate in travel or, you know, health-wise, you can go out to attend these live events and really flaunt their experience on social. And what is that going to look like? And how do we, as brand leaders, help prepare ourselves for that or think about that? But on the flip side, I think that there's a great opportunity. We now have the ability to, through digital virtual experiences, democratize access in ways that maybe we haven't thought of before, taking new audiences behind the scenes with us on a virtual conference floor, connecting them to different types of experiences or speakers, maybe in ways that we didn't think about. And so there's an opportunity here as we start to widen our audience base, utilizing different platforms. Next slide. And I think from a behavior perspective, we're going to continue to watch retail really closely as they're leading the way. They are the first ones on the front lines that are starting to open up, and experiential has always been so closely tied to retail as it pertains to delivering on consumer journeys and the way in which we enact and map out audience behaviors. So we're seeing things like innovation in contact-free touchscreens, line management systems, the adoption of AR, VR. Harrods is using and installing a footfall monitoring technology to limit capacity in its London flagship store. Well-known retailer Warby Parker has developed an app that's going to allow store associates to take measurements for your glasses without ever having to touch a person. So there's really interesting innovations that we're going to see retail invest in, that we're going to be able to adopt for experiential practices now and then moving forward, which is something that we're watching really closely. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about trends, what we're seeing, what's working, what is really here to stay, and what's the opportunity to invest in. Next slide, please. I like to say what's trending, or truly what's over trending now. I think with the shutting down of countries and quarantine restrictions, we started to see so many brands and companies and organizations flock to social media, Facebook Live, Instagram, etc., and start to produce a lot of what they called experiences, or which really was content, right? The Met Gala with Anna Wintour and Florence Welch did a performance online that you can tune into. Netflix launched their watch initiative, so you could do a new form of movie night with you and a friend or a family member. Philanthropy moved online, so entertainers let us into their apartments, their homes, in their pajamas like Post Malone, to raise money for organizations. Press briefings happened over Zoom calls. That's all great, but it has been done, right? And I think the goal is to really take a step back, look at your audiences, look at the opportunity, and start to build and create new types of experiences utilizing these different platforms that are going to break through. And I think the important thing to take away is experiential has been such a true success factor for so many companies and brands. And it's because it gives you that in real life, tangible currency, right? The ability for people to share, to truly connect. It provides an element of transparency between an audience and a brand and an offering. And that's really what we need to think about as we start to pivot to virtual or even this hybrid moments. And oftentimes what we saw from a trending perspective is it was very much content coming at us versus those two-way opportunities. And I think that's what we're really going to need to close the gap on and make sure we don't miss out on that opportunity so we can continue those tangible moments of engagement and participation. Next slide. So let's talk about a couple of ways how we can do that. I've said hybrid events a couple of times. I really think that this is here to stay, regardless of where you are from a company perspective and what type of event or experience you're faced with putting on, or direct to consumer activation. I think we're going to start to see a lot of small intimate gatherings that utilize technology for more audiences to participate in. So for those that have participated in online conferences, I think we're seeing more and more of that, but we're looking for more opportunities to fuse what's happening on a screen with actual participation at home. So we're seeing the rise in audience polling, utilizing social that works alongside your conferences to ask questions, having breakout sessions, all of those different types of pieces to really start to add another layer to these moments that might be taking place predominantly online. Next slide, please. I think there's a great opportunity to reinvent and relook at things that are already happening that we can use as part of experiential. So if you think about the simplicity of real world delivery, there is an app or a platform in the States called Drizzly. So I basically can get alcohol delivered to me within an hour because I'm in Manhattan, within a day. Outside of that, there's that great delivery service in the UK called Deliveroo. What are some opportunities that are already in the marketplace that we can co-opt and further deliver on those hybrid experiences? So if you think about a great product launch, what if you can have a small group that dials into a virtual session with a chef, and prior to that session, they are delivered all of the ingredients, as well as a family member or a colleague. And so now there's 5 or 6 of us getting one-on-one time with the chef. We're participating, we're building and cooking alongside them. We're really experiencing a message, a brand, a product in a way that simply happened because we were able to utilize existing delivery opportunities and platforms that are already in place. And it goes a little bit more sophisticated or beyond the thought of your typical press mailer, right? And opportunities for surprise and delight. And I think we're going to continue to see sort of those surprise moments from the tech perspective, ongoing usage of drones and other ways to get product in hand or create these sort of unexpected moments, either during a virtual experience or post to continue that engagement. Next slide. Virtual exhibitions are going to be something that a lot of brands are going to start to invest in. I think, there's an opportunity there for great physical installations that maybe weren't able to be produced to be brought online. So you can save all of that work and all of those plans and build an actual environment that people can participate in via virtual reality or some of the already existing platforms out there. And what's great is you can build and utilize those physical interactive moments and then build them later as different areas start to open up or conferences become available again or people are willing to travel. So you can look to find efficiencies of spend. But what's really interesting here is you can build one particular environment and then look to adapt it to multiple audiences. So if you think about a typical conference floor or potentially a large product innovation or launch moment and all of the different audiences that maybe you never got a chance due to money or budgetary restrictions that you couldn't have participate, now they can. You can bring in industry leaders and or media to preview it first and talk to key stakeholders within a particular environment. You can widen that base from an influencer perspective, have them come through the same environment, but your messaging starts to shift or the content or the types of speakers that they're engaging with also changes. Or is there an opportunity even farther down the road to allow consumers to start to walk through this brand environment? What does that look like? How do they participate? What are the experiences that they're sharing or the people that they're hearing from? So there's really a great way to invest in these virtual exhibitions and start to maximize your dollars and being able to spread your message a little bit wider through different constituencies throughout the company. Next slide. This is one of my favorites. How do you fuse, again, that online moment with what you lost in a physical space? And if you have an opportunity where there just really is not a play for physical attendance, or maybe this is a creative solve, it's still possible to show real-time world impact. So we think about digitally integrated installations. They typically incorporate physical builds, and they respond to actions people take online or mobile devices. And they're incredibly compelling and really just so much fun. If you think of everything from a life-size game of Battleship, so we know a company that typically does an in-person event, took it online and co-opted Battleship called Battle Cars. Players got to come onto Twitch and they actually got to play against each other and blow up cars in real life, utilizing game tools on that particular platform. Similarly, there was a company and a group that did a crowdsourced art exhibit where you were able to log in and give direction to the robots at hand. And they created this beautiful art installation live by all of the participants that tuned in and were able to give cues to the robot arms throughout the day. There is such an interesting audience layer of participation here that you get back, even though you're participating in a virtual way. But what's also cool about this is you're participating in the platform in which that opportunity is happening on, but through live streaming, you have an ability to widen that audience. So next slide, please. And live stream is really having a moment. I think as all of us were forced to focus on content either through our televisions or our mobile and sort of iPad devices, live streaming really took off. Facebook, Twitch, even Snapchat, people are really tuning in, with larger audiences that we've ever seen. And so when you think about building out an experience, you might be building it for a particular platform, but there's an opportunity to use live stream for it to go even bigger, right? So if you think about Travis Scott and what he did this past spring with Fortnite, he knew that his audience were huge gamers. He had an affinity of gaming and he had already built up the opportunity as he was a player himself within the games, and often consumers would find themselves playing against Travis. So he decided when he was going to drop his album, he would do it in a way that went straight and direct to where his audience was, and it was in Fortnite. He created this amazing concert, over 13 million people participated in, but the hook here was not only did they go direct to their Fortnite audience, they went wider. They streamed it on Twitch, they streamed it on YouTube, and they got an extra 3 million people to participate and view that concert. And it was such a talked about moment. And it really was Travis and his brand meeting his audience where they were in that direct moment. And that's so much of what experiential brings to the table and where that opportunity lies for a company or a product or a brand. And then the other thing about live streaming is it allows you to play with technology and add that other layer of creative. So if you think about, all of these entertainers going live from their home, that's great. But why not kick it up a notch? Why not think about dynamic ways of utilizing creative through AR. So you can see through the example on the bottom of the slide, we have our typical performance, but there is this added layer of energy or moment. And while this is particularly meant for entertainment, you can really see the opportunity by putting a series of speakers on a stage and then actually having that stage come to life with messaging, with tutorials, with 3D modeling if we're showing off a car engine, or potentially taking people through education around a new drug or opportunity that way from a health perspective. So many great opportunities, and such a way for you to broaden your audience and your eyeballs. And then finally, from a trend perspective, this has been on the market before. Next slide, please. But what we're really seeing is the increased use of mixed reality and the product demos. We talked a little bit earlier about brands and companies having the opportunity to democratize access to experiences. This is such a great way to do so, especially when you think about broadening to younger demographics, or going and talking to kids and education and things of that nature. VR and AR can really aid in significant and meaningful ways for interaction, replacing that hands-on trial if you can't get that product in hand. We have a lot of clients right now that are talking to us saying, we have this great product opportunity and this messaging, and it's right for this time frame, but I'm having issues with my supply chain. This is such a great way to overcome that issue with mixed product reality demos. Everyone these days has a mobile device. We send them in an expensive Google Cardboard viewer out to those recipients, and you can really have that 3D moment. So maybe we physically can't put the product in hand, but they can get pretty close through the elements of mixed reality. So next slide. Where do we go from here? Well, great question. Next slide, please. I think first and foremost, you need to take a quick step back to make that pivot. What are the business goals of the experience now in the new realities? Who are the new audiences that you might reach, both those that your experience was slated to reach by design and those that you might be reaching now by default by bringing it virtual? Where is the opportunity or thoughts that you have to think through? And what are you going to achieve by activating on this new platform? And then finally, what are your key messages? Are they still relevant? Are they still powerful within this current environment and the platform by which you're activating on? And how might that delivery might have to change when you think about the ways that you answered the first couple of questions. And so when we think about best practices, next slide, this is really what we've boiled it down to when you think about an all virtual or even a hybrid online offline experience. You need to keep it simple. You don't have an opportunity for an audience to walk through a physical experience where you can feed them different messages through different layers, through different elements of signage, content, people that they meet. So you need to think about how you can simply streamline the messaging that you want to put out there. Think about things in small bites, edit the content and the overall experience down to be more informative, but also entertaining. Nobody wants to see just a talking head all of the time. There really needs to be a level of engagement, especially if you want your messages to land and break through some of the noise that we're seeing that's already out there. You still need to foster connections and intimacy. I think more than ever, experiential is such a great channel for brands and companies to turn to because we are looking for those connections. We have been separated by so many in the past couple of months, and everyone is so ripe to make those connections and have brands start to facilitate that for them and open those doors. So what a great way to be there. Get creative, be fun, obviously within reason, depending upon your topic, but think about social first ideas and really surrounding yourself with your social channels. So often we see brands make the mistake of just tacking on social to the back end of an experiential idea. We believe and have always built our work to be earn-centric and social at the core, so that there is always a level of engagement pre-event, post-event, and this system that's already built in for amplification. We need to replace the gram. That is what we built success off of from an experiential perspective. That was our social currency. What are the levers that we're pulling or the elements that we're layering back in that's going to replace all of that social cachet and currency that a brand had lift off of from an experiential perspective? Great. So I'm going to turn it back over to myself and Christiane, and we can do a little bit of Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Jenna. Actually, I'm ready to to get started for my next experiential event. So you guys are happy. If you have questions, write them down in the Q&A section. Let me kick it off with at least you showed all the things that vanished. Will we see the big fairs really coming back? Because I see in a lot of industries, they're still very important. What do you think? What will they look like?
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to come back. I think they're going to show up in different ways depending upon the typical timing of the year and where everyone is based on where that particular event sat, right? So I think a great example that I'm currently working on with a couple of clients is what will New York Fashion Week look like this September? Besides just COVID, it has had ramifications across the fashion industry as a whole and the way in which people do business. So we're talking about, again, that hybrid moment. I do believe we will see shows in person, but that shows will be very limited. Maybe there are only some very key stakeholders that will attend those in person. So maybe particular fashion editors or buyers. We might be looking at the ways in which models get dressed and opportunities where we had captured content in very different ways. So I think we're going to start to see some elements of those physical events happen, but I really don't think until we've hit a level of, I want to say like safety, that the bigger moments will come back. Okay. CES has said that they're going to play in January. I'm looking forward to understanding how they think that's going to happen, because if you've been on the floor at CES, you are literally like this at times. And so we're going to have to play that by ear, but I think companies have to take stake in what is best for their company based on the policy, and what do they want to invest in to talk to these audiences.
Yeah. Now that you said New York Fashion Show, I just read the other day that in the Berlin Fashion Show will move to Frankfurt, and they changed the whole concept. So it might also be an opportunity for some of the fairs to really reinvent themselves as well. Do you think there will be single sectors who might have it easier, or like, I don't know, the healthcare industry, or I don't know, the IT industry to make it a different way of experiential? Or do you think all are facing the same challenges?
I think some industries that have already traditionally been in a virtual setting, like the IT, even health sectors, will have it easier because they're already used to building experiences that have inherently lived online that might have found their way into the physical space in certain types of conferences to speak to doctors or product launches, et cetera. I think other industries, for example, automotive, are going to be a little bit difficult. At the end of the day, the best way to move metal, as they say, is by getting somebody behind the wheel of that car, right? And that's going to be a little bit hard. But I think that's where a company and a brand has to look to that lifestyle aspect that they building. We're not just selling a product. We're typically, for a lot of these companies, selling a lifestyle. What are the key passion points, and how can we show up and participate that way until we can physically get people back into the cars or back into a tangible way to participate in that product. And so I think that you need to, within that pivot, think about, if I can't do exactly what I was doing before, how can I still engage in a way that feels meaningful and relevant, providing value? And then once doors begin to open a little bit more, I can bring back the focus of that experiential moment or some of my other channels to what I need to do in order to ultimately sell, click, buy, whatever our goals are from that perspective.
So we got a question here where someone said, do you have any tips how to do a workshop virtually which is normally done in person?
I think, again, it goes back to what is the purpose of that workshop, right? Is it about fostering collaboration? And what do you want to get out of that? Perhaps maybe before that workshop could have happened with 25, 50 people in a room, because you can control what's happening. You see people's facial expressions, you're breaking off into small groups. Sometimes an online experience like that doesn't allow for that. So could you think about pivoting the workshop so that maybe you start as a large group and a speaker addresses the team, and then you break off into individual sessions where it's small group conversations. You have that one-on-one. You can see people's reactions. You can have real-time talks, and then bringing the group back together. So I think that there's certain elements of that I would look into that is harder sometimes to facilitate. Often especially with a lot of these large Zoom calls, you get lost in the sea of the tiles, right? And you start to notice that maybe people aren't paying attention or they don't feel as engaged. If you can limit the size of the group, you can start to do that. And I think if there's anything that you can do as part of that workshop that just entertains people or engages them, you do the same in person. What are some of the tips and tricks you use to break the ice? And what is the version of that that can happen virtually online as well?
Yeah, I just actually happened to have done one that was quite easy because it was a really small group. But there are also some great tools. For example, we used Mural, which it really makes you feel like you're sticking the post-it stickers somewhere. Exactly. So there is some interaction, but still, as you say, it probably doesn't make sense to make that 4 hours. So it might be also more going back and forth or doing it a couple of days rather than doing it as we did before, all in one day, right, to get to somewhere.
100%. Yeah. And I think to your point about like time, know your audience. And it's totally okay to do some informal polling, especially so many of us are working from home with children in the background, with partners and spouses that don't realize how loud they are on a telephone call. You know, it's really difficult. I don't think you can expect people to show up to what was a 3-4 hour conference. You really have to, you know, tighten what you're doing. But the cool thing about investing in virtual is that you can create content that is on demand. So you and I can have a great conversation, people can learn from it, and later on they can go and click and take a deeper dive into the deck that I shared, post on their own time, when it makes the most sense and when they're open to receive the information. So I think there's great opportunities for you to build both pre-roll content and live experiences and blend them together.
Yeah, so someone asked again, what was a tool? I write it down. It's Mural, I think, or Mural. I would need to check it up, but pretty close to Mural. So yes. So as we are already almost at the end of the time, I would leave two more questions. Yeah. So I think you did a pretty good job explaining how to move forward. What would be the big watch outs if a company or brand is going to do things? Are there things that you say, please be careful? I mean, of course, in the beginning, there was this, I think it was safety is very important, but are there any other watch outs?
I think watch out is, especially for virtual technology. I think a lot of people are thinking, well, I'm no longer investing in big production, so I don't need maybe the team or the partner behind that to help facilitate. We can simply move this to online. I can handle it. In reality, you know, there is an element of production that still goes into this. You need to still think through a typical audience journey. What are those types of touch points? You need to test and facilitate the tech on the back end. We'll give everybody a peek behind the curtain. There are 4 people behind the scenes right now helping us facilitate this two-way dialogue, right? To make sure that Zoom doesn't go down, that the slides are there, that the audience is present, or audio, excuse me. So I think people are trying to cut corners a little bit, or they think that they don't need the producers or the partners on the back end, when in reality you do. So I think that would be a big thing.
Yeah, that so often I think it's like this. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be a big watch out. And the other one is, I think, tech for tech's sake. Yes, it's about going virtual, but that doesn't mean you should overload people with so much tech. You don't want to do a virtual moment and then make them switch to Twitter to see a poll or participate in a conversation and then move to Instagram to do something else. You really need to keep it simple. Direct them to an easy location where that consumer journey and experience is easy, and then follow up later on, but don't bombard them just because the tech is there. Yes. We like to say we're savvy. We're not all that savvy, but it becomes more of a distraction than anything else. So don't invest in tech just for tech's sake.
Yeah, so one of our viewers just mentioned an artist, which unfortunately I'm not familiar with, but you might. Mark Rebillet, I would say, is currently the only artist in the US on tour with a drive-through tour. All attendees watch him in person from his car. He gained his audience through live stream, a good example of hybrid and digital and real. And I think I've seen, I heard in Germany, I think I saw a picture of a band and also Oliver Pocher doing that. So I think also we saw a lot of I don't know what it's called in English, but driving to a cinema with a car
Yeah, drive-in cinemas. Yep.
Drive-in cinema has become popular again,
Yes.
which actually kind of was my childhood memory. So yeah, we might see things going on like this. So my last question, if if you look fast forward 12 months from now, what do you think our event or experiential experience will look like?
Good question. I think regardless of once everything opens up and is back to normal, however you describe it, it's still going to feel different. I think the cool part about quarantine is that it boxed a lot of creatives in, right? And when you box a creative in, you only do what you can to find your way out. So I think everybody has been sitting on and reevaluating what we did in the past and thinking about new creative technologies and ways in. So I think that this hybrid moment is here to stay. And I think it forced people to understand and learn technology at a clip that we didn't think was happen. A lot of this tech already existed. It just was the fact that it hadn't been adopted as much. So I think we're going to start to see more opportunity for things to be online and offline. But I don't think offline experiences will ever go away. It's going to come back. And I just hope things like, the ubiquitous pop-up shop dies a little bit, or the flower wall, or the Instagram swing. I hope we've sort of lost those a little bit and go back to some more strategic but very unique ideas in the experiential space.
Yeah, actually, at the beginning of this pandemic, I really did think all the live and eventual experiential things are dead now. And when I first got into touch with you and saw all these things, it really did spike my imagination. And I thought, oh my God, I think this can actually be bigger than before, different but bigger. Yeah. So I hope we also sparked your reimagination what experiential might look or will look in the future. Thank you all for joining us. And if you have any questions later on, you are very welcome to pop them directly to me or to Jenna, and we will give you our thoughts on it. And so I thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. I say, hopefully I see you guys next time on our next web session, I think, which will probably be in around 2 weeks. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.